Welcome to the Dawgland post-game show. I'm Anthony Joki. He's Jack McCurry. Today, obviously talking about the Browns' very tough loss to the Cincinnati Bengals yesterday, 17-16, and what was a great defensive effort, and we'll get to that by the Browns here in a little bit. But Jack, unfortunately, there were four plays that determined the outcome of this game, and it was two missed kicks, an extra point, and a field goal, as well as two very crucial interceptions on plays where the receiver was diving for the ball and it popped up in the air for interceptions. And, we've seen a lot of ways that the Browns have lost over the years. And yesterday, you could just add to that. Despite the incredible defensive effort, it came down to pretty much these four plays. And unfortunately, they leave week one with a loss against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you were to tell me, because this the number seven has been in my mind since like 21 hours ago when the game ended. If you'd have told me that we held the Bengals to 7 yards in the second half, and granted, I think one of those was resulted, yeah, just 7 yards in general, 7 yards. If we would have held them to 17 points and we still lost, wouldn't have believed it. Just because I thought if our defense played well and our offense played pretty much a clean game and put us in a position to win, we'd win the game. And lo and behold, somehow the Browns once again found a new way to lose. It's just it's I said it yesterday, just plain and simple on Twitter, stupid mistakes. And that's what it was. Just the stupid little attention to detail things in football that can make or break a game broke the Browns yesterday. And it's still just like I'm not as angry, but I'm still frustrated because everything went right for us and put us in a spot to beat the Bengals, which, we could have built momentum off the victory. And then lo and behold, we're still sitting here 0-1.
I mean, especially when you look at what happened in the rest of the division yesterday, Baltimore lost a really tough game. They blew a 50-point lead in the last 5 minutes of the game and ended up losing to Buffalo. Pittsburgh won in New York. You get that game yesterday. You know, it's nice to be 1-0 and, maybe the top two teams in the division be 0-1 at that point with Baltimore and Cincinnati. But it came down to those four things. And what is it with the kickers? Like, I am full blown, like, hate the kicker train right now. I'm sure if Pat McAfee wants to, come at us, but I think we have irrefutable proof of our uh disdain for kickers, like why we can be upset with these kickers. Because over the past handful of years, minus Dustin Hopkins a couple years ago, the kicking game has just been atrocious when it's come to extra points, which should just be a gimme. Like those should be 95% every single year at least. And it just seems like we struggle so much with those. And then the field goal, that was a short field goal as well. That was pretty much an extra point as well. I mean, like, come on. Like I don't understand what's going on with this and how this has become such an issue, for this football team.
Yeah, I mean, and we talked about it game preview, the season outlook. Like we're going in with a young, inexperienced NFL kicker and Andre Smith, and we're like, give him an opportunity. If he falters on the opportunity, we can go get another kicker, because that's just kind of been the mindset with Cleveland since Phil Dawson. And on social media, McNeil posted, we know the infamous QB jersey, and now it's become the infamous kicker jersey, because we have shuffled out 15 different kickers since Phil Dawson left at the end of the 2012 season, which screw you, Banner and Lombardi, for not even offering him a contract. Still one of the worst decisions in Cleveland Browns history since '99. But yeah, like it shouldn't be this hard to find a kicker. Like I know around the league, there's teams that have kicking issues and whatnot, but like Cleveland just can't find one. Like we have shuffled out so many guys from Billy Cundiff to Andre Smith. Like the list is out there, all the kicking options we've had here. and we've had one good season out of it. Two, if you want to count Travis Coons in 2015, because you go back and look at the numbers, it wasn't bad, but yeah, we have just shuffled guys in and out so much so, Anthony. When you look at the list of available kickers, because everybody wants, I think, including the both of us, for them to bring in somebody. Like five of the options are former Browns kickers, and that just tells you all you need to know about the state of the kicking position in the NFL. So it, I know how mentally challenging that can be, that position. But at the end of the day, like it shouldn't be this hard to find a kicker. I would think not. Maybe the front office doesn't value it. Maybe analytics doesn't value special teams. That's something that I'd like to do a little bit more research on and see like where our special teams have ranked since Paul DePodesta and Sashi Brown took over the organization in 2016, and it's been passed on to Andrew Berry and his front office. Like, do they not value special teams? Like, what's the answer there? But the end of the day, you got to make your kicks. And, I know Stefanski's backing him right now, and the players came out and backed Schmidt, but I would be stunned if they didn't add somebody this week to the practice squad at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost at the point, Jack, where if you score a touchdown, I would not be upset if they went for 2 every single time. I know there'd be a lot of people that would probably go pretty crazy at that, but with how many issues we've had with just simple extra points, I honestly would not be opposed to going for 2. And we talked about it in our season preview a little bit. Maybe not the going for 2 part, but anytime you're inside the 50-yard line and it's 4th and 2, 4th and 3, like, go for it. Like, there's nothing else to lose. They're definitely probably not competing for the ultimate goal this season. What do you have to lose by going for it constantly? If you convert 50% of the time, 60% of the time, like that's pretty good. So, if they feel like they can do that, I would have no issue with them constantly going for the 2-point conversion or going for it on 4th down, if you're like inside the 40 and it's a very short yard situation.
Yeah, I mean, we looked at it right before we started recording, like outside of 2022, like we're about 65% or higher in 2-point conversions on average. So we know that Stefanski loves to be aggressive. I know analytically, like when you play Madden now, and like you said, if we're like inside the 45 or instance, and you're asking like the computer what to do in a situation, it's being aggressive and having you go for it. I think that's becoming the name of the game here in the NFL, is to be aggressive, to go for it. So it would not stun me, and we've seen it happen plenty of times under Stefanski, where if he's not feeling very comfortable with the kicker, he's going to be aggressive and go for it, whether it's on 4th down or maybe going for 2. Like Stefanski's never been afraid to go be aggressive. I know some people will rip him for it. But Stefanski at the end of the day is going to do what he feels like is best as the head coach, and what the data sheet will say. And I know people are going to hate that because it's analytically uh, the way to go, but we're at this point now. If we don't trust the kicker, like why not just go for it? Especially when you have a defense that can back things up. In those instances where you're not successful in your aggressiveness.
Before we get to the defense, let's kind of and talk about the most positive aspect of the game. Let's talk about the rest of the offense. So, you know, outside of the 2 interceptions, you have to be pretty positive with the things that we saw yesterday. The rookies on offense, Fannin and Sampson both contributed quite a bit. You look at some of the statistics here from yesterday. Joe Flacco, 31 of 45, 290 yards, 1 touchdown, those 2 interceptions. Sampson had 12 carries for 29 yards. Not great with a 2.4 average, but you look at the receiving. Jerry Judy, 5 catches, 66 yards. Dylan Sampson, 8 catches, 64 yards. Harold Fannin, 7 catches, 63 yards. Cedric Tillman, 5 catches, 52 yards. David Njoku, 3 catches, 37 yards. So they did a really good job of getting a lot of people involved yesterday on offense, Jack. How do you feel about what their game plan was in terms of getting all of these people involved, especially, Fannin and Sampson. They're 2 rookies.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what those guys were able to do yesterday, let's just focus on the rookies. To see them part of the game plan, to see them get open, and for Flacco, who's been in the league forever, to trust two rookies in their first NFL games, like that tells you all you need to know is that Flacco felt comfortable with them from the 6 weeks of training camp to even the last preseason game against the Rams. You could see that, Flacco was comfortable with them, trusting them in passing situations, and they weren't afraid of the moment. Like, we could talk about Samson and the way he ran the ball and the running game as a whole, but he was effective out of the backfield as a check down option. Like you mentioned, 8 catches, 64 yards. Like, that's a guy that's going to play a role in this offense. Um, Especially once the other running back, which we'll get to at the end of the show, comes back and gets into the groove. Like, Samson's carving out a role in this offense, and he's going to be somebody that Flacco's going to trust, and hopefully, or if we get to the rookies, he'll be a guy that they can trust. And Harold Fannin, like, he's probably my favorite draft pick out of this class this year, and I thought he looked so well. He did drop one ball, but I thought he uh, made a lot of good catches yesterday, made some plays to get downfield. I think he pairs up really well with Njoku in the tight end room. To see those two combine for 100 yards together, I think that bodes really well for the passing game, especially with Flacco under center. But the passing game as a whole, I thought played really well outside of the drops by Judy and Tillman. You guys cannot do that. I know Flacco took the blame and said that he could have thrown a better ball, but like, Judy, like, that looked like shades of what he did in Denver, where he was inconsistent at times with his hands. And, Tillman, we haven't really seen that out of him in the small sample size, but in those situations in the game, and when it's hitting you in the hands, you got to haul those in. Like, those obviously were back breaking moments in the game yesterday that ultimately cost us that. And it's unacceptable, especially for Judy, who's been around in the league a while. Like, you can't drop balls like that. You gotta haul those in when they hit you in the hands. Like, but overall, I thought the passing game was good. It's just those key moments that you gotta make a better effort on the ball.
Yeah, came down to those 2 key moments, those 2 plays, those 2 interceptions on offense. And maybe even more so the second one because they were driving down the field and, potentially getting back into the field goal range after the missed field goal, that they did have, and that was just absolutely crushing, to see that one happen, so but,
Yeah.
I
With it
wanna
happening, oh, I was just gonna say, with it happening once, I said it in, I don't remember if it was in our group chat or another chat we were in. I was like, it happens. But then when it happened twice and both of them resulted in an interception, it was just like, why does this happen to us? Like, why does it always feel like we're cursed or there's some like voodoo on this franchise? Because it's the fact that it happened twice and both resulted in interceptions. It was just like, it was an only in Cleveland moment. And I don't like to say that, but it definitely felt like it yesterday.
it always feels like, you know there's so many times where we see the ball hit the ground, on a fumble, and it just bounces right back to the other team. Like it never bounces to us. Like I don't understand what's going on. If they put like GPSs in these balls or whatever and just direct it to the other team, somebody's just masterfully controlling the route of these footballs that they take when they, do end up hitting the turf or bounce up in the air or whatever. But it was extremely heartbreaking for those two. And one thing I wanted to say about Fannin, I would say he's pretty much wide receiver number 3. The way that they used him yesterday, lining him up not only at the tight end position, in the backfield, outside, they lined him up all over the place yesterday, and it seems like, he's going to be that extremely versatile player that is going to be able to do a whole lot for this offense, and it's going to be very exciting to see. So I know the stats are going to say that they ran a ton of 12 personnel yesterday, but you can almost count him as a wide receiver on this team.
Oh, without a doubt. And then using him as the wildcat, like the one play where he took the direct snap and I think it was a 3 yard gain. I'm anxious to see if they're going to use that in a goal line situation, like, or like first and goal, like inside that 10-yard line, because he is such an athletic tight end, like, and he's versatile enough to do that. I know they were doing it in training camp because they even had, I know they ran one play in practice where he threw the ball. So he's going to be that, I think they call it the Joker on our offense. I can definitely see him being utilized in a variety of ways. But yeah, I would agree with you. Outside, he would be wide receiver 3 A, wide receiver 3B, because I feel like Njoku can be utilized in that role as well.
You know, I doubt he'd ever get to like Taysom Hill levels in terms of being able to throw a football, but
Right.
at least there's that versatility there where he's able to do just about anything. It seems like, and that's extremely exciting to see. From the rookies. Yesterday. The one downside rookie wise, Isaiah Bond had a catch on that first drive for 6 yards, and then he didn't get another catch after that, which was unfortunate. But the way that they were getting him involved early, with that catch on that first drive, I'm like, okay, maybe there's a game plan. And he was out there for 20 plus snaps. He just didn't get another ball.
Yeah, I think he'll get utilized more. I think it's just it's hard with the personnel groups that the Browns use. Like it's hard to get a lot of guys out there like Jamari Thrash. He's been talked about for so long. He only had one target, and that was towards the end of the game when the Browns were pinned back and had to go 99 yards. But I think we'll see Bond and we might see Thrash some more throughout the season. But we all know like there's only one football. And when you have Judy, Tillman, Fannin, Njoku, and even the running backs, it's hard to get everybody involved. But I'm sure we'll see more Thrash and Bond as the season progresses.
All right, let's head over to the defensive side of the football. And yesterday, incredible effort. You look at the statistics that they put up yesterday, Jack, holding the Bengals to 17 points, which is really good. The Bengals scored, I want to say, over 30 points more than half of their games last year. Uh, I do remember that stat because I remember hearing that they lost majority of those games when they scored 30 plus points because of their defense. But you look at the Browns did defensively. They held the Bengals to 95 yards passing. That includes the sack yardage. Burrow had 113 yards passing. They held Chase Brown to 43 yards, which majority of those, Jack, came on that first drive because they, ran the ball pretty much down the Browns' throats on that first drive. But after that, they were able to, get things under control and be able to, hold the Bengals offense. E. Higgins had 3 catches for 33 yards. And then for Jamar Chase, he had only 2 catches. Yeah, 2 catches for 26 yards yesterday. So, they did a great job on the playmakers for the Bengals yesterday. You talked about it earlier, only holding them to 7 yards in the second half. The defense really stepped up yesterday, and we were wondering if they were going to get back to 2023 levels of this elite defense. And through 1 week, that is a positive sign. Now, we know the Bengals have started out slow in recent seasons under Zach Taylor. The true test is definitely going to come next week against Baltimore after they put up 40 points and lost in Buffalo yesterday. But to have this defense be so strong yesterday and keep the Browns in this game and only end up losing by a point, like you have to be extremely positive from what you saw defensively.
Yeah, you definitely feel encouraged after 1 week. I mean, I'm looking at the drive charts right now, and the Bengals, they had the 68-yard drive for a touchdown on the opening possession. They punted their second drive, and then the third drive was 8 plays, 54 yards, and a touchdown. After that, Anthony, this is how the Bengals drives resulted: end of the half, punt, field goal, and then 4 straight punts. So after those first couple possessions, and I know there was a lot of question marks about some guys on the field. I saw criticisms of Miles Harden, Mason Graham, etc. Like after that, it seemed like Jim Schwartz and his defensive staff got made some adjustments, and the players went out there and executed. And it was some great defensive ball to watch. Like it makes you feel encouraged. But like you said, Baltimore's coming in. They're probably pissed off that they lost that game Sunday night. They're going to come out hungry. It's unfortunately, we know what they're celebrating this coming week in Baltimore. Of course, it's against us, but like you have to feel encouraged about some things. Obviously, there's still things on that defensive side of the ball that worry me. But overall, I thought they played extremely well against a high powered offense. You feel really encouraged about Greg Newsome, the way he played. You feel encouraged about how the linebackers played. Swesinger, Devin Bush, those guys stood out. And of course, the defensive front, Miles Garrett, Isaiah McGuire, Malik Collins, like the depth on that defensive line showed out. They were aggressive. I mean, you feel encouraged about it after 1 week, but we know there's tough tests down the road coming for this defense. And you hope they'll be able to withstand them here in the next coming weeks.
I think one of the key things about this defense yesterday, Jack, and why, towards the end of the game there, they were able to get those 3 sacks on Joe Burrow consecutively in that drive. The time of possession yesterday, the Bengals only had the ball for 24 minutes yesterday. So this defense was able to stay off the field. They were able to stay fresh. We know how much Jim Schwartz likes to rotate guys in and out. So they were able to apply that pressure late in the game. Once they got off the field there after that third down, which they almost had a safety. They were so close to getting that ball or trapping Joe Burrow in there for a safety at the end, which those 2 points would have put us up by 1 and we get the ball. That which would have been crazy for that situation to have happened, but they were so close to getting that, and for them to give us the ball back in great field position, give us an opportunity to win with those 3 consecutive sacks. No, that was the loudest that stadium was all day yesterday, but it was fun to see that. It was great to see that, encouraged by that for sure. Unfortunately, the Browns just couldn't put the game away in terms of getting down the field and, you know, punching it in, via touchdown or field goal after that.
Yeah, I mean, we knew Miles was going to go off at some point because the momentum was building. Like he hit Burrow on a couple plays where Burrow had to scramble, and they were near sacks, but he ended up getting a yard ahead. And then it was like Miles just exploded on that drive in the fourth quarter with 2 straight sacks. He almost had a third, but Isaiah McGuire cleaned it up. And I thought he played really well. McGuire being the opposite of Miles. He had 5 pressures just like Miles yesterday, and that sack on third down, like that just makes you feel good about the defense. You talked about the depth. I mean, Miles and Graham played a lot, the majority of the snaps up front, but the fact that you got Malik Collins, you got McGuire, Harris, Alex Wright, and then even for a little bit, Aiden Huntington and Cam Thomas can come in and give you some reps as well. Like that's what Jim Schwartz, I think, drools about every day he comes into the office because he's got 9 or 10 guys that can go after, get the pass rush or rush the passer as well as shut down the run game, which I thought was a good thing because Chase Brown was getting his early in the game and they adjusted whatever they needed to up front and were able to limit him because that was the one worry I had early on in the game watching was that Chase Brown was getting his yards. It just seemed like the Bengals offensive line uh was bullying the Browns defensive front and then whatever adjustments they had to make paid off because they were able to just shut down that Bengals offense for the rest of the game. And it was, it's disappointing because of the mistakes that happened on offense and on special teams because, that was one of the best defensive games they've had in the last couple years. And unfortunately, we're sitting here with a loss, even though they played so well.
Well, we'll see if this is something that they could replicate as we go on with the rest of the season. And like we said, next week against Baltimore, extremely tough matchup offensively, just based on everything that they do. We know what Derrick Henry is. We know what Lamar Jackson is. It seems like they got Zay Flowers really involved yesterday. He was slicing up the Bills defense. So, Mark Andrews has been there forever. They have a ton of playmakers. So we'll see what this Browns defense is able to do next Sunday against the Ravens out there in Baltimore. It'd be a very interesting matchup for sure. lastly, before we get on out of here, the Browns did finally sign running back Quinshon Judkins. They were granted a 2-game roster exemption for him to get acclimated with the team. It seems like he will be able to play this Sunday against Baltimore, according to Adam Schefter. That is kind of the plan. Now, obviously, that is barring if the NFL steps in and handles, issues, any sort of punishment for the issues that happened. So now that we have finally signed Quinshon Judkins, Jack, how do we feel that we were finally able to get this thing finally done and he can join the team?
It was kind of a relief because I mean we had our questions about the running game and what that could be once things fell into place as the season went on. Like obviously Sunday did not look very encouraging on that running game, both in terms of blocking and just the way that those guys were executing. Mainly Jerome Ford. I mean, Dylan Sampson didn't really have any encouraging runs. He did most of his stuff in the passing game, but we know what Judkins was at Ole Miss and Ohio State during his collegiate career. He, obviously what happened during the offseason was inexcusable, regardless of the charges getting dropped. That he was in that situation, but you know, it's going to be interesting to see what the plan is with him, Anthony, because he obviously hasn't had any work with the team since mandatory mini camp back in June. I'm sure he's still in great physical shape, but I'm sure they're going to want to do a ramp up period with him. Obviously, they have this now one game except exemption because yesterday counted as part of the 2 weeks. um, I feel encouraged, obviously, that Schefter said he may play. Ken Carman on his morning show mentioned that Mary Kay had said that Judkins met with the NFL on Sunday, which means that, that hurdle has been cleared. Now we just got to see if the NFL is going to put down some kind of punishment. But the fact that Adam Schefter said he could go Sunday against Baltimore is encouraging. I'd imagine, he probably won't get the bulk of the carries. I'm sure that'll still go to Sampson and Ford. Would like to see more of Raheem Sanders instead of just being like a short yardage back, like maybe give him some carries and let Judkins get ramped up. But I think this will be a boost to the running game, hopefully. Still got concerns about the run blocking up front with that offensive line, which definitely was shaky at times on Sunday. But getting Judkins back into the fold, you just hope that'll give another boost to the offense, which already has some things that are positive, but things obviously still need to be worked on. But looking forward to seeing Judkins out there.
Yeah, if the rookies yesterday were any indication, of what we could expect from Judkins, like if Judkins plays well, this draft class could look very good. Mason Graham, Plessinger played who had 8 tackles yesterday. We didn't even really talk about him. Had a monstrous hit in terms of pass defense as well. So, he played well. We saw what Fannin did, saw what Sampson did. So you add Judkins to this, it could be a pretty good rookie class, and that's what we've been hoping for the past few years. From the draft. Obviously, we haven't had a first round pick in a few years, so obviously having that this year it was a huge help. Being able to get Graham there in top five, but I'll be very interesting to see how Judkins integrates with this team. It seems like with Jerome Ford, certainly could be on his way out. Maybe not, right now, but giving Sampson the bulk of the carries over Ford yesterday kind of gives you an idea of maybe what they had planned for Judkins to be that main back instead of Ford. So will Ford maybe get relegated down to like the third guy in terms of running backs? Maybe ahead of Sanders. So it's going to be fun to see what Judkins can bring to this team because once he does get involved, Jack, I feel like he's going to be just fine as long as the offensive line holds up.
Yeah, I mean, we lost Jack Conklin on the first drive yesterday because he got poked in the eye, but I thought Lucas played okay. for being a veteran swing tackle. Dewan Jones, not not a very good promising first game at left tackle as a full-time left tackle, but we'll see how the season progresses. But yeah, like you said, Judkins coming back could be another positive to this rookie draft class, which played really well yesterday. And hopefully, and this has the potential. It's one game, but this draft class has the potential, Anthony, to be a franchise altering one, which could save or at least buy Andrew Berry some more time. I know a lot of people are skeptical of him. A lot of people are pointing the finger at him over the kicking situation, and all I got to say to that is he did what you guys wanted to do, and then you don't like what the option was. But I don't see anybody like screaming for the answer at kicker because obviously the Browns haven't had one, and the options out there aren't very promising. So, Bob Barry has done good so far with this draft class. Overall, I know it's fair to criticize some of the moves he's made, but overall, this rookie class looks good. And if Judkins could come in and produce, it'll make the rookie class even stronger.
Yeah, and that's all we can hope for because we talked about the eye test in our season preview and seeing those types of things. So hopefully we continue to see this positive trend, especially with the rookies, and more positive trends from the second and third year guys as well. So, but we're gonna get on out of here. We are going to be back later on this week with the Browns and Ravens preview for Sunday. If anything happens major in between, I'm sure we'll hop in here and talk about it. Be sure to follow Jack over on X at Jack McCurry08. Give me a follow at Anthony Joki, Joki. The Dogland on X, Facebook, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere you consume your media. The Dogland is on there. And until next time, always remember, go Browns.
Go Browns.